To learn from and to grow. Dealing with emotions to create decisions that it shows. I need a lesson. I need a lesson. I need a lesson. Lessons learned.
Everyone has a lesson. Whether it's good or bad, you can learn from it.
I need a lesson.
Hi, welcome back to another episode of Lessons Learned. I am so glad to have you back. The month of May is Mental Awareness Month. The purpose of this awareness is to educate the public about mental illness, such as 18% of Americans who suffer from depression, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder. I wanted this episode to be on the serious side because there are victims in the world going through mental and physical abuse. During a time like this, where we have to stay inside because of a pandemic, more victims are getting hurt. It's good to see the signs early and leave before anyone gets hurt. I have two guests explaining their stories and giving advice on how to avoid a situation like this.
Hi, Tia. What's going on?
Nothing much. Thank you for being on Lessons Learned.
Anytime.
Yeah, so this topic today is about, relationships and everything like that. So do you have one or anything?
Yes, of course. I can talk about my very first relationship. I was with the person for about 2.5 years, I would say, right? And basically, it was probably one of the worst experiences. But, lessons learned. So I feel that I learned a lot from it. I learned a lot about who I am and like what I'm going to tolerate and what I can't tolerate and just certain stuff. So basically it was like, oh my goodness, we met when I was in high school. It was just some random, I was doing like half days of school, half days in college. I was doing that dual enrollment, so I had like a psych class at Stick that was free, and it just counted as like a college credit. So I was like, okay, I'll take that. So there was this guy that sat behind me all the time. Mind you, I had braces, like I had no confidence whatsoever, you know what I mean? Like, I don't care. I was a senior. He sat behind me, and then all of a sudden he started like talking to me more and interacting with me more in class or whatever. So he finally like asked me for my number. We would hang out every single day before I went back to high school, like, and chill for a little bit, you know what I mean? So it was great in the beginning, you know what I mean? Finally hung out with him at his house. In the beginning of everything, it's always good. I always say that.
How many months was that?
I would say maybe a solid month, but I went to class like a couple days a week, I would say. But I would go and I would see him often, you know what I mean, at school a lot.
Yeah.
At Stick, so. It was also very different for me too because he was a different culture than me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he had a different cultural background than I did. So, I mean, it was different for me. I was in love with him, quote unquote, first relationship or whatever. But then as time goes on, things started to get bad. Like, I wasn't getting treated with respect. It would just be like we would do nothing like for each other, you know what I mean? Like, it was just very like dark, I guess. I don't know. And then eventually it took a while for that stuff to be happening, and just like the controlling and thinking that it feels like they're just kind of, I don't know, like he had more power over me or something like that. Like, I guess that's controlling, but it's like he had this like power trip in his head. But at the end of the day, like, I did so much for him and his family at the end of everything. And then even like for the shit that happened with us, it's like it was so crazy. It eventually got physical and just like not violent, but like just nasty, you know what I mean? Just very nasty. And no person should ever have to go through that. But like I said before, when this started, it's like lessons learned, because at the end of it all, I just know like how good of a person I am, and I'm gonna continue to be the same exact way that I've ever been, because at the end of the day, that's who I am. So now I'm just happy. That was a while ago, like, but yeah, that was my very first relationship, guys. It's just crazy how things end up, you know? And then they always come back. They always try to, at least. But it never, and they never get past that gate that you have, that metal gate at the door. Like, no way. Ain't no way you're coming back. Nope.
Bye.
Bye. See you later.
So I guess May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So I'd like to talk about the time I dated someone who was emotionally abusive. And when I met this person, I thought they were really charming, and like they had a bit of an ego, but it was in a way that was like that his confidence was very like it lured me in, and I was just like, this person is really cool, and like they have a lot of friends, and I was kind of drawn to them in like a very superficial, like in high school want to date the popular guy kind of way. And so in the beginning he was very persistent. He made it very obvious he liked me, and then he slowly started kind of like just very subtly pulling back, and I started to feel like really jealous and insecure, and I was like super desperate to be with him, and I felt like, you know, if I don't act now, this person won't be into me, and I have to kind of like pin him down as my boyfriend before he loses interest, or like, I have no idea. So I ended up asking him out, and he said yes, and to this day, I wonder if he actually wanted to date me. But we dated for 3.5 years, and what happened was I was just completely degraded into feeling really low self-esteem, and it was a very slow and insidious process, and I would just like to talk about how it happened, what it was like, and just share my story. I think now, I mean, in the moment, I just felt like he was my boyfriend, and I loved being with him, and he was my everything, my world, and I kind of isolated myself from my friends because I just wanted to be with him. Like, no one else made me as happy as him, and now I realize that he was fulfilling this thing inside me that was very insecure and wanted to be approved of, and he kind of fed my self-esteem a little bit, but then he also sort of would leave me wanting more and leaving me wanting more compliments and everything. There's kind of like this back and forth of like almost this intermittent gambling, like satisfy my insecurity a little bit and then just be really distant. And over time, this back and forth really degraded my self-esteem and made me very, very desperate to be with him. And I really felt that deep down he was my most redeeming quality, and that like I couldn't do things without him. Like I wouldn't find a new roommate if it wasn't for his social circle. I needed his help with assignments, and now looking back on it, I know that those things weren't true. It's just that he kind of questioned my ability to do things, so I started to doubt myself. So he would say things in the beginning of our relationship, that made me feel like really beautiful, really special. And then as time went by, I would kind of catch him in these lies. Like, he would tell me like I was the only person with like these features that he had been with, and like I was, he's never experienced someone like me before. And then, after 3.5 years, I'd learned more about his exes and other girls he's been with, and I'd learned that like he was just lying to me. And finding these things out that I felt were my only redeeming qualities, that they were just complete lies, it was soul crushing, because my whole self-esteem was attached to what he thought of me. So when I found out I wasn't special or unique to him, it was just absolutely devastating. And what would happen is I would start to go into these kind of like fits, I guess, like these almost like panic attacks, but not exactly. It wasn't really caused by anxiety. It was just like this really intense self-hatred. And I remember I threw like a mason jar at the wall in my apartment once, and like I would scream at the top of my lungs, and like it was a lot of crying. A lot of crying. And he would just kind of paint me like I was crazy and I needed help, and he wouldn't really take any responsibility in the situation. And I learned now that he was gaslighting me, and if you don't know what gaslighting is, it's a tool abusers use to manipulate people into questioning their own sanity. So my therapist said that if a person comes to her and said like, oh, they made me feel crazy, that's kind of a sign to her that something's a little bit wrong, because that's what gaslighting does. You just feel like you're insane. And this person, though it's not obvious at the time, it's because this person is getting you to question things about yourself and your sanity. And over 3.5 years of gaslighting, you do question your sanity and you do feel crazy. And he would immediately agree if I mentioned feeling unstable or crazy. He'd always just be like, yeah, you are. And I felt like I was always misinterpreting what he was saying. And just like, I figured it was because my mind was sick, like I wasn't well, I needed help. I needed help from like a mental health professional or something, like I needed therapy, when really he was shady. He was just saying things that...
It was him the whole time.
Yeah, it was him the whole time, but he kept pointing the finger at me. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, I'm the problem, because I didn't feel independent enough to really accept that he was the problem, and ultimately I needed to leave him. He kept saying how good I looked skinny. And I was really skinny because I would work out multiple times a week. I would eat a vegan diet consisting of less than like 800 calories a day. Like, my meals would be like a bowl of quinoa and like a massive bowl of broccoli. And that would be like all I'm eating. And he was very like persistent that I needed to be vegan. And like if I was watching a cooking show or something where they were making like meat or fish, he would just be like, why are you watching this? And you're like, you're vegan, why do you care about non-vegan food? And so I ended up weighing 98 pounds by the end of our relationship, and I'm 5'5", so that is like extremely skinny. And I remember I was like going to the gym and I almost passed out one day, and like my body was telling me something was wrong, but because I wanted to be like his hot vegan girlfriend, or like I felt like being vegan made me more desirable to him than like other girls, so I kept up the diet even though it was extremely unhealthy for me. And eventually I started hating myself so much. Like, I wasn't happy with my body. I wasn't happy with this obsessive fear of him cheating on me. That, like, I ended up to deal with the self-hatred, to deal with all these conflicting feelings, to deal with feeling so powerless. I would actually, like, I would cut myself, like, self-harm and stuff. And it's just because I didn't have the emotional capacity to, like, hate myself anymore. I needed to actually, like, physically do something to myself. It wasn't like I couldn't bear with the thoughts anymore, so I started expressing it in actions. And I thought if I could physically, another thing that was really big about cutting myself was if I could show him the cuts, he would see a physical sign of how much he was hurting me. And I figured if he could empathize, if he could see it, instead of me just telling him I'm hurting, that he would finally care for me. And over time, I've come to realize that the fact that he cared so little about me is very bizarre, and his lack of empathy for me is very bizarre, and I've been told that he has narcissistic personality disorder, which is, like, it's a bit different than, like, just looking in the mirror and being like, oh, I love myself. Like, people with narcissistic personality disorder, they lack empathy for other people. They're, like, very self-absorbed. They have incredibly low self-esteem, so they feel the need to, like, have almost like, it's almost like being parasitic. Like, they leech onto a person that they feel like will feed their self-esteem, and they just drain them of every ounce of confidence they have, and it makes the narcissist feel satisfied and better. And I saw near the end of our relationship, when I was really, really, really hurting, when I just felt I had no redeeming qualities anymore, I was just useless, that he started to lose a lot of interest in me, but he still would not break up with me, because emotionally and mentally abusing me still served him, still made him feel better. And I remember begging him to leave me, like, just saying, like, please just break up with me. If that's what you need to do, just, like, do it. And he would always refuse to, and I never felt strong enough to break up with him, because I felt like I still loved him and I wanted the relationship to work, but I could tell, like, there was something wrong. And he just wasn't putting effort into it, and he just didn't care. So, the way things ended was that I was about to graduate college, and I got this opportunity to study in another state, and it was like a 3-month internship, so he wouldn't come with me, I would go alone. And so we knew that I was going to leave for the summer to do this internship, like a couple months before I was actually leaving. And I've heard that this can be a really dangerous time for people in abusive relationships, because the abuser tends to feel like scared, or they don't want to lose their victim because they benefit from the abuse. They feel better from it. So they can actually become more abusive and more dangerous knowing that you are about to leave them. And so 2 weeks before I left, he actually assaulted me in my sleep. And he's never owned up to this day. He's never given me an apology for it. And I trusted him for 3.5 years. He didn't do anything to me for 3.5 years. And then one night I woke up to him basically like about to assault me. And he just said like he was half asleep. He didn't know what he was doing. But yeah, but all my guy friends, they're like, no, like you can't. The act that he was doing when I woke up to him, like you can't do that when you're half asleep. Like anybody would wake up, and even if he was half asleep or sleepwalking, that's still therapy inducing if you assault people in your sleep. So the fact that his response was just to deny and deny and deny is like very odd to me. And that night I said something about feeling unsafe around him, that he wouldn't go home, and we kind of just lived our lives like it never happened. And it's something that I still really feel unsafe about to this day. I mean, it messes with your head when you are trusting someone for 3.5 years and then they do that to you. It kind of messes with your trust in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I broke up with him during my internship, and now he's married to someone a year later. And I want to be happy for him. I want to think he's become better, but I don't see how that's possible in such a short amount of time, and I really fear for her. I really feel like something bad is going to happen to her, like what happened to me, and I don't see how someone that sick can reform themselves within a year after they showed no remorse for like these really horrible things that they did to me. And I called him before he got married. I didn't know he was even seeing someone. I found out they were married through Facebook. And we were still talking, like trying to be friends after I broke up with him. He never mentioned his new wife. And he said that I needed to apologize for damaging him, that I was really bad for his self-esteem, and that I was really horrible to him. And it kind of made me feel like maybe I was the abusive one. But now I see this, like, I was protecting myself. My screaming and crying and self-mutilation and trying to, like, get him to see I was hurting. Like, I guess it can look like abuse to some degree, but it's like, it was all just...
because of him.
Yeah, so... And I've always been a little bit insecure, but, like, never like I was in the relationship. And I feel like being insecure growing up really made me vulnerable to someone taking advantage of me like that. So, yeah, it's pretty scary looking back on it. I can't believe I went through that for 3.5 years.
So what would be your lesson for everyone?
So, a thing that I felt in the relationship a lot was that I had to fight to get him to care about my emotions. I had to make arguments for why what I thought mattered. And I've realized now that if someone feels in a relationship that they're not being understood and this person just doesn't care and they have to make a case for why they should be considered, like, that's not healthy. And if that happened to me nowadays, I would consider leaving the person. Like, I would not put up with that again, because I think that could be a sign that someone is dangerous, because it's a very slow process. So being okay with those things over just a couple months, it messes with your psychology, and all of a sudden you just feel so desperate to be with that person and really dependent on them. And they could be abusing you and you might not even realize it. So, also, I'm in a relationship now, and it is wonderful, and I know what true love feels like, and I was really, really happy that I had the opportunity out of state to leave and to meet someone else, because I think true love is out there. I think there are people that can treat people right, and I mean, I don't feel like there's some things I have to work through in therapy to this day. I broke up with this person, I think 2.5 years ago now, and I'm still in therapy. I'm still having nightmares about the relationship. But I don't think it's like I'm a damaged person for it. It's just everyone takes their own time to process things, and my new partner is very supportive of it. So I say, like, if someone does kind of resonate with my story, it's like, don't feel like you're damaged and you'll never find someone and things like that, because that's just not true. It's not true for me, and there is recovery from this. There is a better life after a bad relationship. And even if it's not abuse, maybe it's just unhealthy, maybe it's just a bit toxic. Like, still, there are people out there that are not toxic, that are good for you. So just don't settle. I think that's my lesson, is don't settle.
Last year in 2019, the Mental Health Organization created a campaign called For Mind for Body. This was to encourage people all around the country to focus on healthy aspects of their lives in order to promote mental wellness. Here are some things to promote mental wellness: Have 8 hours of sleep. Consume more whole grains. Drink at least 3 liters of water per day. Exercise at least 30 minutes a day. Stay away from toxic people. Engage positive thoughts. Learn how to manage your own stress. Take time to yourself every day. Thank you for listening, and check back for more episodes. Got any ideas and want to share? Message me on Lessons Learned social media accounts or email me at learnedlessons2020@gmail.com.